Good evening, everyone, and I'd like to welcome you and call to order our Lucan Biddulph Council meeting for Tuesday, February the 15th. There's no additions to the agenda. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest? So it was at noon on February 15th, 1965, that our flag was raised for the first time on Parliament Hill. I have been thinking about our flag a lot over the last few days. With the news of the day that we are open to, and of course with the Olympics. And on a side note, if you have not watched the medal ceremony from this morning of the speed skating women's team pursuit, I'm encouraging you all to go back and watch that, because that's how the national anthem should be sung, with passion and joy and tears in their eyes. Those girls, they were just amazing up there on the podium. But our iconic red and white maple leaf has always been a recognized symbol across the world. It has always been greeted with joy and respect. I have a vest, and it's part of the Bay's Olympic collection, that I have had the opportunity to wear on a number of personal trips across the United States and in Europe. Every time I have worn it to a foreign country, I have been struck by the reaction it sparks in others. Whether it was recognition from a fellow Canadian or a shout out from an Austrian on the streets of Salzburg, there has always been a feeling of pride as I have worn it when acknowledged with respect from others. Today, our Lieutenant Governor shared a post on her social media sites about an event her office hosted 7 years ago when a living flag was created. And I was struck by the power of her reflection of that event and the flag and how timely it is for our times today. She reflected that the flag is a symbol of our love of this land. Our flag is the symbol that unites Canadians. It reflects the common values that we all take pride in: equality, freedom, and inclusion. As her honor reflected today, the flag is, and these are her words, to remind us of the power of unity and the dangers of division. The last few weeks have been difficult to watch unfold, but today and always, I am reminded, and I do believe, that Canadians are bound by more that unites us than divides us. I will always wave the flag with pride. On this Flag Day, I have faith that our flag will continue to be a source of pride for Canadians and a symbol for all the good that Canada was built on and continues to grow in. So we have a public meeting tonight that we have to move into, and I would ask for a mover and a seconder for the recommended motion that Council adjourn its regular meeting in order to sit as the Committee of Adjustment under the Planning Act. So if I can get a mover and a seconder, Councillor Regan and Councillor Hodgins, all opposed, and that's carried. Okay, we have a minor variance to speak to, application to speak to, and at this time, I will welcome our planner, Dan Fitzgerald, and hand it over to him.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the committee. So tonight on the application or the agenda is application A1/2022 and concurrently heard together application A2/2022. With the effect of this application is a request to permit a reduction to an exterior side yard setback for 2 units that are located in the Ridge Crossing subdivision. So, I hope everyone can see that. So the lands, as can be seen here on the location map, are again located in the Phase 2 Ridge Crossing townhouse development, which is generally on the, west side of Miller Drive and south of Nicholson, and is addressed 17 Nicholson Street in the local municipal addressing. So subject to these 2 minor variance applications are Unit 12, which can be seen here on the location map, as well as Unit 13, which is on the other side of the private drive located in the townhouse subdivision. The subject lands are approximately 1.02 hectares in area. And again, they are located on the south side of Nicholson Street. So as a reminder for committee here, a site plan was approved for this particular property, and a site plan agreement was executed on May 4th, 2021. And additionally, the applicant did receive vacant land condominium approval, which did receive final approval on August 2021. So the proposed plan for construction of the townhouse dwelling units remains the same, principally as the site plan that was executed in the agreement. However, it's noted that upon registration of the vacant land condominium, an error generally was made by the surveyor, which does place the property unit line at 2.46 meters and 2.48 meters. We'll zoom into this plan. You can kind of see it here. So originally it was at 2.98, 2.96, and here you can see it's at 2.48 and 2.48 respectively on either side. Which generally then creates a 0.5 meter exterior side yard setback on the units on either side of the private drive. Generally speaking, the unit plan remains the exact same. Rather, it's just the placement of the unit line on the exterior side yard of the vacant land condominium that has changed with respect to the plan. So with that said, I have reviewed the minor variance application with respect to the 4 Planning Act tests, and do find that the proposal is generally consistent with the intent of the official plan, the zoning bylaw. It's considered minor in nature, and it's also considered appropriate and desirable development of the lands. So with that, I'll turn it back to committee, and I'm certainly available to answer any questions that you may have. Oh, sorry, and I apologize. I did not include my recommendation, so I am recommending that this particular these 2 committee of adjustment applications for minor variance be approved. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Dan. And are there any questions at this time from the committee for Dan? Councillor Regan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And please, I apologize if you mentioned it, Dan. What's the reason for the variance?
Through the chair. So in this instance, when the surveyor went to register the vacant land condominium plan, they placed the unit line, which in our bylaw is considered a lot line, 2.48 meters inside of where it was actually supposed to go, which has now created only a 0.5 meter setback for the house to the unit line. However, when you look at the plan holistically, setbacks are the exact same as originally approved in the site plan.
All right. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Hodgins.
Thank you. Are there any potential issues if one of these properties decides to build a fence? Like if they were to have 2.5 meters and they want to do a fence, but now they don't have that property, is there any impacts that way?
Through the chair, so private fencing generally is in the situation of a vacant land condominium completely up to the condo board. So from our perspective, there wouldn't be an issue. But yeah, I do understand what you're saying in terms of like trying to provide access to the rear of the property. If there was a fence that was placed there, it certainly could present an issue for that unit owner.
It sounds like it wouldn't be our problem to deal with the nature of the property. So thanks, Dan.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? So with that, you've got a motion in front of you. I'm not going to read the whole thing because, and you've got, I guess, yeah, no, sorry. I'm looking at two different places on my paper. I'm not going to read the whole thing because it is quite lengthy, but I know that you've had time to review that, and anybody watching can of course go online and see the exact wording of the motion. So with that, I will ask for a mover and a seconder. Councillor Westman and Councillor Hodgins. All opposed? And that's carried. Okay, thanks, Dan. Okay, the next thing we have to do is go into the Court of Revision, of course, but that's not scheduled until 6:15. So we do have a couple minutes until then. So maybe if council is okay, I'll move ahead to the adoption of the minutes because I think we can do that in the time in front of us. So you've had time to review the minutes from February 1st. Councillor Murner.
Sorry, you will have to motion out of Committee of Adjustment into regular meeting.
Right, thank you. All right, so let's get a motion to go out of our Planning and Committee of Adjustments and into regular meeting, and that's Councillor Regan and Councillor Westman. All opposed, and that's carried. So we'll head over to the minutes, and you've had circulated the minutes from our February 1st meeting, and also circulated were the closed session meeting minutes of April 30th, July 13th, July 20th, August 12th, September 7th, November 18th, December 7th, December 21st. And I trust that you've all had the opportunity to read those. And if there's nothing to be amended from the February 1st meetings, as well as our closed meeting minutes, I would ask for a mover and a seconder to approve those as circulated. Councillor Manders, or Deputy Mayor Manders, and Councillor Regan. All opposed? And that's carried. Okay, we'll go into the business arising from the minutes. And the only thing that's been added to that list is the pool renovation. And of course, that's ongoing, but it keeps it at the forefront. So we know that updates and whatnot will be coming. Was there anything from the minutes that were circulated that council wanted added to business arising? Okay, seeing none. Then I think looking at the agenda, it's 6:13. I think what we'll do is we will just pause now for 2 minutes until 6:15, and then we can do the Court of Revision. I don't think it makes sense to move into anything else this close to 6:15. So we'll just break for a minute. All right, so it's 6:15. So I need, looking for everybody to come back on. Councillor Regan, Councillor Hodgins, Deputy Mayor Manders, and Councillor Westman have all come back on. Okay, so what we do need is a motion to have council move to sit as the Court of Revision under the Drainage Act to consider the Hardy Drain North 2021 and that Mayor Kathy Burkhart Jessen be appointed as chair. Can I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Councillor Regan and Councillor Westman. All opposed? And that's carried. So this is the Court of Revision for the Hardy North Drain 2021. And of course, it was presented to us a number of weeks ago. And this is at what time we would consider appeals. But it is my understanding that we have not received any appeals. And as such, we could proceed to closing. Is that correct, Josh?
That's correct, Madam Mayor.
Okay. So with no appeals on the table, the motion in front of us is that the Court of Revision, having met on behalf of the Hardy Drain North 2021, does hereby adopt the drainage assessment schedule dated December 9th, 2021, as submitted by Spreet Associates Limited. Can I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Councillor Hodgins and Deputy Mayor Manders. All opposed? And that's carried. And a mover and a seconder that the Court of Revision be closed at 6:16 p.m. in order to reconvene our regular council meeting. A mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Regan and Councillor Westman. All opposed? And that's carried. Okay, we do have a delegation tonight, and I'm wondering if our friends from the OFA are, here comes Crispin and Joanne. There. So we do have a presentation tonight from the OFA, the Ontario Federation of Agriculture, and it's my pleasure to introduce Crispin Colvin, Lambton Middlesex Executive Director, and Joanne Fuller. And Joanne, you're going to have to forgive me because I don't know your position right offhand, but certainly Crispin and Joanne are not any strangers to our council, and I'm glad that they're able to join us tonight. And at this time, I will pass it over to Crispin.
Thank you, Mayor. It's a pleasure to be here and to see you. I hope one of these days we can actually get together in person. I feel like the rest of your councillors, no doubt, we're all missing that social aspect, and including things like this. And just want to say hi to Ron Raymer. I haven't seen him in ages either. Good to see you, Ron. Joanne Fuller is the member service representative for Lambton Middlesex. So she does all the hard work and makes me look good, is basically how I put it. She's the Ron Raymer of the OFA for Lambton Middlesex. How's that? So on that note, Mayor, I'll go right into my presentation if I may. And I believe you have the slides that you can put up, if I'm correct. Great, thank you very much. And I'll just say next slide when I get to it. We skipped through the, oh, no, we didn't. I was going to say the introductory one, but that's okay. So as I say, I'm Crispin Colvin, and I'm with the OFA, and I'm with Joanne Fuller tonight. Middlesex County has 1,976 farm families. These are your neighbors. These are the people that provide food to you and to your grocery stores. In Ontario, we have 38,000 farm families. So Middlesex County is one of the largest and best land producing areas. If we can go to the next slide, please. 98% of the farms in Canada are family owned. And in fact, probably that same statistic would apply to Ontario. But Ontario's agricultural lands are a finite and shrinking resource. And Ontario cannot continue to sustain this loss of agricultural land, not if we want to maintain our strong position as a food and fiber and fuel producing province. In 2016, the Census of Agriculture revealed that Ontario had 12.3 million acres of land, which is less than 5% of the farmland in Ontario. So we have less than 5% of land that's productive in the province of Ontario. And in fact, in Canada, only 7% of the land can sustain agricultural production. But we're losing 175 acres per day to development, to commercial growth, to highways. Once that land is gone, once it's paved over, once its use has altered from agriculture, it's gone forever. Next slide, please. So despite occupying less than 5% of Ontario's overall area, agriculture and agri-food are Ontario's #1 economic driver. In fact, in 2019, Ontario's agriculture and agri-food sector from field to fork contributed $47.3 billion to Ontario's economy and supported in excess of 860,000 jobs. In fact, we continued to produce food and economic stimulus to Ontario throughout the last 2 years of the pandemic. Agriculture is what will give rural communities the economic edge that urban communities simply don't have. Next slide, please. So the long-term land use planning needs to focus on protecting agricultural lands so that we can ensure that we have the resources available to continue producing food for the future. And one of the things that we're supporting is intensification. I sat in on your council meeting, I think it was about a month ago roughly, and you had a number of different proposals. I think it was in the neighborhood of about 650 acres, if my math was correct, around Lucan, that various developers were proposing to grow and expand and build houses upon. I don't know if any of those proposals included 2- and 3-story walk-ups, excuse me, but that's the type of intensification we need in our rural communities. We recognize that farms need employees and employees need an affordable place to live. But as I watched that council meeting, I noticed that each of the councillors had an area that they felt should be included in the growth of Lucan. So I couldn't help but wonder at the end of the meeting, where does the growth stop and when does agriculture production begin? We need to be more cognizant of what we're taking out of production and what happens to the area around it. Next slide, please. So the OFA, we've always believed, and we've preached this for years and years to all levels of government, that the highest and best use of Ontario's arable land is for agriculture. Land capable of supporting agricultural activities is a finite, it's a strategic, and it's a non-renewable resource. It's worthy of protection. It's worthy of keeping and preserving for future generations. Preserving it is also provides safe, affordable, and sustainable food, not only for Ontario, but for Canada and the world. In fact, only 14% of the countries in the world are actually self-sufficient and have excess crop production. And according to a National Geographic report of 2014, which is dated, I realize, it lists only 8 major countries in the world that are self-sufficient in food production, of which Canada is one. I can't emphasize enough how much that underlines the need for food security. The communities that have an ability to grow and export food will be the communities with the strongest economic base. Food and food production will be the economic strength of the future. Next slide, please. So at the OFA, we understand that the needs of the government to respond to the various economic challenges brought on by the pandemic are very real. We've all had challenges, we've all suffered from it. But we also recommend strengthening the provincial policy statement, requiring fixed urban settlement boundaries and policies that require mandatory intensification instead of sprawl within existing urban areas, as well as mandatory greenfield density requirements. Density is going to be key to preserving our land and to preserving our food production. Next slide, please. Once a farm is turned into a shopping center, a warehouse, or a subdivision, it never produces food again. We lose everything that was grown on that piece of land permanently. And you only need to look at places where factories have gone out of business or buildings have been torn down. Refineries are gone in Sarnia, but there's still a lot of brownfields. None of that will ever go back into production. But aside from food production, Farmland provides an expansive list of environmental benefits to all Ontarians, and sometimes this gets overlooked. Next slide, please. So as I say, once it's taken out of production, the ecological benefits like wildlife habitat, including wildlife corridors, carbon sequestration, climate change mitigation, that is, groundwater recharge, none of that is possible anymore. With the worldwide concerns about climate change, farmlands and its ability to sequester carbon while producing food should be a primary concern. And it's just one important reason to protect rather than pave. Next slide. So the COVID pandemic has brought a lot of eye-opening to all of us. I don't need to tell you that. But it's amplified something else. It's amplified the need and the demand for local food production. Consumers are increasingly looking for locally grown produce, meats, and dairy products. Products that meet the high standards that make Ontario and Canadian products demanded worldwide. And Canada has a very high standard, and that's why our food is looked upon favorably. 70% of what we consume in Canada is produced in Canada. So 70% of what we eat, we grow in this country. As well, 50% of what we grow, we actually export. That's a pretty high number. And that is one more reason why the economic value of the land far surpasses as food production than it will as growth. Now, one of the things I noticed you were having just before we came in, or I was invited to speak to you, was a plan of townhouses, row housing. I'm not quite sure how to put it. My terminology will be wrong. But that's the beginning of intensification. And one of the other things Lucan has done that I look upon as favorable from an agricultural, but also from a societal point of view, is the former seniors home, and now it's a group home, I believe. I may be incorrect on that. But that type of building where you can have many people living comfortably, safely, securely in an intense type of, and more intensified than single family dwellings type of residential setting is very, very positive. I would encourage you to do more of that and take less land out of production. What spurred this by Middlesex Federation and myself and Joanne was the council meeting with such a large area that you were going to take out, and you're sitting on one of the finest pieces of agricultural land in the country. On that note, I will stop, and if you have any questions, and again, I want to thank Mayor and Council for taking the time to allow us to be here today.
Well, thank you very much, Kristen. I certainly do appreciate the presentation. I think it's been a while actually since the OFA and MFA have presented to Lucan, so it's great to have you both here. I've been fortunate enough to see similar presentation at the county level. But a couple of things before I open it up for discussion, because you hit on intensification, and we really only have two apartment buildings. For years, we really only had two apartment buildings in Lucan. And now there's a development that's right behind the township office. We've got two completed buildings, and there's a third one that will be built as part of that project. Just on the other side of the township building, the famous or the infamous shillelagh has come down, and you'll see an apartment complex being built on that, as well as when you come in from the south end of town, just before you get to the traffic light and Clark's, there's a proposed apartment building being built there. So, you know, for 2022, there's a potential of 4 apartment buildings being built here. And as you mentioned, you can see that row housing is now a product that is offered that hasn't been offered before. So, you know, you can see those changes and that are happening in our community, and that we are intensifying in ways that perhaps we weren't so open to before. So that change is on the horizon. So I will open it now to council, to my colleagues for questions or comments. Councillor Regan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Crispin. Nice to meet you, and thank you for the your presentation. I was just a little shocked, a little bit, I think, surprised by the 175 acres a week. And I'm just wondering, and I guess just maybe comment questions, we don't have to answer them now, but a lot of that I think is maybe taken up by larger urban areas, places, maybe London and Toronto and Windsor and those areas that are taking up a lot of that. Because when I was looking at that number and just building a little bit on what Madam Mayor said, we're thinking, I think, of developing 138 acres over the next 15 or 20 years. And there's been, and to the mayor's point, to what you just mentioned, there's been a great deal of talk about intensification, about variety of housing and understanding the need for that, that variety. Attainable housing, I think, is a term that we use. So I'm just wondering, and I'm just hopeful, I guess what I'm saying is that Lucan Biddulph is part of the solution to this, or being part of the solution to this. It's just my comment is all. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. May I respond, Mayor? Just thank you. Just it's 175 acres a day, not a week, Councillor Regan. And much of it will be, as you're correct, in larger centers. So we're looking at that statistic is from Statistics Canada and the 2016 census. I expect the 2020 census, when the numbers come out, will show an increase in that to probably 200 or 220 acres a day would be my fear. One of the additional aspects of it is when you build a highway, for example, I'll use 413, the proposed 413, it's not just the road that takes up land, it's all the ancillary businesses and houses and things that will want to be beside it. So it's not so much just a road that will create an issue, it's everything else that comes with it. If you build it, they will come. And by the way, I do want to congratulate you on the fact that you are intensifying, and that's something that we need to have. We know we need employees. You need employees in your community. They have to have an affordable place to live. So we're not saying don't build anything. We're saying be reasonable in what the requests and the demands and meet the needs of those who can come.
Thank you.
Other comment. Did you follow up, Daniel?
No, I'm just saying, I just saw the, just over on the left-hand side today. That's what happens when I don't bring my readers. My apologies, Council.
No worry.
Deputy Mayor Manders.
Yeah, more comments than a question, but no, it's interesting. I've come a long ways. This is my third term on council on intensification and density, and it's amazing the conversations that you have on the streets is with people, and they're saying you're using up too much farmland, and if it's in their backyard, they're saying it's too dense, and you're just sitting there going, "Oh my God!" You don't use up farmland that's not not across the road from me, or if you're going to use the farmland, have great big country lots, and it's just you're just racking your head against the wall on those conversations. And it's, a couple comments on your slides that I say would look better and paint a better picture. Your one slide, I don't feel shows the intensification that we need to do in using air. I feel it looked like, you're talking about the 1, 2, 3 story walk-ups. I agree. I'm surprised you're not even pushing higher, intensification like apartment buildings and density. Your solution is only air or limited or no immigrate or limiting immigration. That's the only solution really. And air is cheap and it's going to save the farmland, but I don't think your pictures reflect true density of what you're really looking for. That's just a comment on your slides. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate the comment because we can certainly make that, we can fix that. We have the technology. But in terms of higher density, I try and temper my remarks to meet the community. And I understand Lucan Biddulph is a smaller community. And to suggest that you would have 15-story apartments would probably not be practical or necessarily cost effective. So I try to recognize the community I'm speaking to. Quite honestly, Mr. Manders, Councilor Manders, I would be delighted if you said we want to do a 10 or 12-story building. And as to the challenges of talking to people on the street, as somebody who spent 16 years in municipal politics, I understand that 100%.
Yes, you certainly do. You certainly do, for sure. Any other comments or questions on the presentation that we just enjoyed? Councillor Hodgins.
Thank you. I want to say thank you, Mr. Colvin and Ms. Fuller and the OFA for the presentation and information. Just a couple comments and then maybe a question or two. Just looking at our official plan amendment and some of the text in there, I do think that, you know, we have a lot of text in there about agriculture being very important to the township. It's an economic mainstay, and how our growth management strategy is designed to limit the loss of prime agricultural land. So I think, you know, our policies that we have set up through our official plan do reflect on that we recognize the importance of agricultural land and protecting it. And that's also in the provincial policy statement. I did want to ask a question perhaps to Dan about the intensification targets that we do set through the official plan. Like we do have targets of like 15%. I'm just wondering, I guess, how do we enforce those targets? Like, would we limit growth if we're not meeting those targets, or how do we ensure that we are meeting the intensification targets set?
So through the chair, that's a great question. What we do in terms of even with the municipal comprehensive review, we look at intensification and actually build that into our projected population numbers and projected growth numbers for land that's required to, you know, achieve your 25-year goal for growth. So specifically in Lucan, I believe Stuart had used the number 20% for intensification over the next 25 years, and subsequently reduced the amount of land required for the settlement boundary expansion to accommodate that population growth. And I believe that is generally our intent moving forward, along with the county official plan, which is going to be opened up for review coming up here very shortly. We will be seeking intensification targets to achieve a higher density development within our local communities. So 20% is our goal right now, which is quite a departure from what you're seeing of the past, especially in smaller communities. However, and more specifically to your question is, how do we enforce that? So that's enforced at time of draft plan of subdivision. So 20% of your development has to be intensified, period, or else you don't get approved.
Anything else, Councillor Hodgins? Okay, great. Any other questions or comments? Okay, well, with that, I will ask for a mover and a seconder to accept the presentation for information. Councillor Hodgins and Councillor Reagan, all opposed, and that's carried. And I will thank Crispin and Joanne for joining us this evening. And I echo what you said, Crispin. Hopefully the next time we see each other, it will be in person.
I hope so. Thank you, Mayor and councillors. And Tina, thank you for making the arrangements. Appreciate it very much. Thank you again.
Yeah. Good night.
Good night.
Good night. All right, so we've gone through our minutes. We've gone through the business arising. So now we are in correspondence. And there were a number of items that were received, but there wasn't any that were pulled by staff for discussion. I don't know if council saw any that they felt we should be addressing. Being none, then I would ask for a mover and a seconder to accept the correspondence items or receive the correspondence items for information, please. Councillor Westman and Deputy Mayor Manders, all opposed, and that's carried. On to committee reports. Blue Water, Deputy Mayor Manders.
No, we haven't met since last time. Thank you.
Okay. CEDC hasn't met.
No update yet, thank you.
Lake Huron, we meet in March. Fire boards, Councillor Westman.
Yeah, we have a meeting scheduled for, is it March 10th, Ron? I think it is. So for the Biddulph Blanchard Fire Board. As part of the Fire Board report tonight, I bring some sad news to our community. This morning we lost Bob Pinkham. Now, Bob served as Granton Fire Chief for a number of years in the early 1980s. He was on the fire department for most of the 1970s. And he served as chief over my father, who was the deputy chief at the time and later went on to be chief after Bob's retirement. Bob had an eternal smile on his face. He was an amazing guy, not just our fire chief for many years. He was involved with the Granton Lions Club and was very strong involved with the programs and fundraising done through the Granton Lions and helped to build our Granton Park. Did a lot of work on the pavilion and was a pretty strong member there. He's also a very strong member of the Granton Masonic Lodge, where I have the honor of sharing Masonic fellowship with him there. And he was a strong member of the Villages United Church. So this is a guy that had given his life to involvement in our community, and him and his wife Anne continued on that even in their retirement, being a big part of the Hardy Foundation, which is a cancer research fundraising company foundation that does a lot of great work. You know, they raised 3 kids who all went on to do great service for our country and for our community. 2 as police officers, and 1 as a multifaceted person involved in our federal government and ambassadorships and what have you. Bob and Ann contributed a lot to our community, and I know Ann will continue to do so. And I hope that our community will join us all in extending condolences to the Pinkham family and showing gratitude for Bob's amazing life. So thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Appreciate that, Councillor Westman. I don't think much more can be said, but he certainly was, he was a neighbor of mine, and he really was an incredible member of our community, and he will be missed. So thank you for sharing that, Alex. And I know that I believe condolences will be sent through Haskets on behalf of the township. So, and then the Lucan Fire Board, I think, is meeting on March 16th. So those are upcoming meetings. ABCA and Upper Thames, Councillor Westman.
Yeah, so strangely enough, both the Asable Bayfield and the Upper Thames have their February meeting scheduled for this Thursday. And so it is the annual general meeting for the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority. So I will be attending as I represent both the Lucan Biddulph and Thames Centers. So I'll be there for the annual general meeting, and we'll resume doing the Asable Bayfield meeting in March. So I'll have a report for us next meeting.
Thank you. The Parks and Rec, the draft PRAC meetings are in front of us. Paul, did you want to speak to anything on them?
I believe most things of note we discussed at the last council meeting, but if there's anything that any members of council have noticed in the minutes they'd like to touch upon or discuss, please, ask.
Okay, thank you. On to staff reports. Ron.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The first report is the potential update to the development charges bylaw. Council had requested that of staff. This is a joint report with Jeff Little, the manager of Public Works. You can see attached to the report is the actual memo from BM Ross outlining in detail sort of the background to the development charges process, as well as the process going forward. And it does give 2 options to council as to how to proceed. Council has the option of instructing council or staff to proceed expeditiously. And that would mean things would have to move very, very quickly to get that passed before the possible lame duck period which begins, I believe, the date is August the 19th is nomination day. So now that's not to say it will be a lame duck, but the potential is there that it could be a lame duck period after the 19th of August. So that is kind of the drop dead date. If council decides to move forward now, that has to be completed no later than that date. So that is the one option. The other option is to basically slow things down a bit, make sure we get exact numbers and sort of narrow down the scope of which projects should be included in the next development charges bylaw and get basically better, more accurate figures for that. Under that option, we would proceed, but we would proceed sort of in a more orderly fashion, not in a rushed fashion. And we would get things prepared so that the actual report could be presented to the public or published on our website for the public to see in October, with the goal of having the new council pass it in December of this year. So it's fairly, I won't read the report, but it is fairly straightforward. Obviously, the largest item in there is the expansion to the Lucan sewage treatment plant, and that's a very, very large number. We heard, that will exponentially push up our current development charges for a single family home and for all the other development that we do have. Now, it should be noted that we do not at this time charge any development charges for commercial or industrial. So that will be another issue for council to decide when the time comes. So with that, Madam Mayor, I will throw that open for discussion amongst the members of council.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ron. Questions or comments, please? Councillor Regan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And Ron, forgive me for if the question is it maybe shows my ignorance of the whole process because it's my first time through it. But so where are we exactly in the process right now? Because I don't think there's I won't speak for anyone, but we don't want to push anything through. We want to make sure that we're not doing anything recklessly. We're doing everything. We're getting as much information as we can. I'm just wondering where we are in the process now with respect to knowing sort of what we're going to be, I guess, for lack of a better term, what we're going to have to pay for and what we need to upgrade.
So I think I interpret your question to mean where are we at? So the current development charges was passed in 2020. So each development charges bylaw has a 5-year time frame. So technically we have until 2025 to update and pass a new bylaw before the old one expires. So we do have some time left on the existing one. I think the thinking amongst staff and council was that we've got some big ticket items coming down the pipe here. We need to get those numbers included in the calculations so that we can start collecting amongst the new builds that are coming to town, because we need to pay for that sewage treatment plant amongst other things. Whether that's sewage pumping stations, whether that's oversizing of sanitary mains, water storage. All those items, road upgrades, all those things have to be rolled into a calculation for the development charges.
Okay, that actually helps you understand that a little more. So these are all just, sorry, Madam Mayor, if I may.
No.
So that again, so at this point right now, we know some of these numbers. We may not know these numbers going into, say, July or August. And then of course, then it still has to come back to council. And not just one other question with this, and again, I don't know the process, but with respect to infrastructure, is the public involved in this with respect to input from the public with projects? I mean, just for infrastructure expansion, do we throw to the public what we might be missing? I don't know.
There is a public component, a public input component to this process. I don't know that it was specifically outlined in the memo from BM Ross, but there is a process. It has to go, the background study actually gets prepared by the consultant and it gets published. The public has a chance to comment on it at an official public meeting, but there is many opportunities for input throughout that process.
All right. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for your patience, Madam Mayor. Thank you. Thanks, Ron.
important to note that, I mean, that is one reason why we have an asset management plan, is because it tells us the projects that we've got ahead of us. And it's easy to, you know, it defines a path for the consultant to figure out, you know, what can be included. But obviously, as Ron has said, the treatment plant is something that's not included in our current DCs. And we need to rope that in. Deputy Mayor Manders.
Well, we need to start collecting real and right numbers that the day our staff can have it ready. The staff, this seems to be a simple answer to me. It can't be, it shouldn't be quick, it shouldn't be slow, and it shouldn't be worked around whether or not someone's running in this group. The day that you have it ready, and if it can't be submitted or the process has to stop because it is a lame duck council, then it simply has to be delayed. But don't work around slowness because we think that there's going to be a lame duck or not a lame duck council. Every day there's a hole in the ground that this could have been done right and proper is not representing our community right. So if you're saying you can have the right answers and have everything encompassed in that number, every day you don't have it is not good for our community.
Ron.
Madam Mayor, so I think maybe the way to illustrate this is to say that if we took the one option and did it fairly expeditiously and got it done before you know, the potential lame duck period, to get it in there, the figure might be 20,000 per household for a single family dwelling. Whereas if you waited, it might be 25,000 by getting more finite numbers. So I guess it's the time versus the actual dollar amounts that we're talking about here. And I don't know, and I'm just using round numbers, don't get me wrong. I don't know whether that's 5,000, but if it's 20,000 now, how many more building permits do we collect from versus getting a more accurate number, which would, in all likelihood, be a higher number at some point in time, whether that's December or January or whatever that is. So that's really the issue is, do you wait for the exact number and get more money per unit? And how many units do you lose on in that time frame from, say, August to December?
Deputy Mayor Manders.
And it is possible to open it back up within the 5 years, I believe, if some stuff was missed.
Correct. And I do think
now.
I do think the consultant actually mentioned that in his memo there, that we do have the option, once we know the exact number for the sewage treatment plant, and if it makes a big difference, you know, council has that option to open it up again.
Right. But I think that, Matt, again, I think you're answering your question. Our development charges are so low, and it's due to the fact, which is due to the fact of 20 years ago grant money that we got, and that's why it's so low. Mm-hmm. And we are not, you know, if we were talking about moving our development charges from 20,000 to 22,000, you know what, I maybe wouldn't be as anxious to get it looked at or passed. This error error or lack of maybe not proceeding is a difference of, you know, you can quote whatever the number is 8,000 currently to potentially 20,000 of the known number. And that's huge. That's massive. Like, we're not and then to reopen it up at that expense to create that much dollars for our community, that makes sense to me. And then to reopen it again a second time, if it's missed, or if you're saying we can, that there, you know, that it was, you know, rushed or whatever, or something was missed or forgotten, and it goes from, it's supposed to be 25 and it was 20. I think what you're saying is that can be adjusted at that time, but the spread of dollars here is massive of where development charges are now to where they're going to go, that we're not collecting on, that we should be. And the only person benefiting is it's going right in the developer's pocket.
Yeah.
We see that right now with the listings. So it's not being passed along to the buyer.
don't know. I think that's more a comment.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah.
I don't have the profit statements, no.
Any other questions or comments? Councillor Hodgins.
Thanks. Yeah, a few comments. Yeah, I think when I first looked at this and read through the reports or the memo and BM Ross's letter, I think we do want to move expeditiously. We want to move pretty fast on this. Like I'm just looking at, it's the wastewater treatment plant expansion. That's the big ticket item. We have wrapping up the EA, we have a pretty good sense of what the cost will be. They'll have to look in a bit more and see what part of that is non-growth, I guess they alluded to in their letter, but like that's the big ticket item that needs to be accounted for. So I would think we want to move quickly if possible to get that big part, and then if we can, I guess, fine tune if necessary in the future. Like I think they said the DC background study can be amended within a year. Like that's why we can't amend it this time around. We have to do it again. So yeah, I'm just looking at, if I think somewhere in there it says like there's a 6-month delay with going with the slower option. And I'm just looking at 6 months. We got a report from Mr. Marsman coming up shortly, and we're talking like 80 units a year. It'd be potentially in the hundreds of thousands of dollars that we'd be missing out on. So I think it's something that we do have to move pretty quickly on. Yeah, and I guess maybe a question through the previous process with the DC background study, like those costs for the wastewater treatment plant weren't captured at that time. Is that just because those weren't known? We didn't know the extent of the expansion, or I guess 2 years ago, did we not know how big these costs would be, or how did we not get that in the previous report? If I may ask a question.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, if I might. So one of the things we have to be very careful with the expansion is that we still have capacity at the plant. So as we build a unit right now this year, we technically, that capacity still being used by, it's still there. So we technically under the DCs can't charge for a new expansion plant because we already have that capacity there. So there's and it's a very, and as Matt from BM Ross explained, there comes a time where you change over from yeah, you've used up your capacity, and all of a sudden now you're starting to build past your capacity. And that's when you can start charging for the expansion. It's a little bit different on a road. For instance, if we're collecting for Saintsbury, we will continue to collect until the project's paid for, and we can implement those charges right away. But because of the capacity of the plant itself, it falls under when we can start charging for that. So we were never able to, at the last DC, it just wasn't an option to include that. And that's where, when we had our initial discussion with Matt about this time, he said we're reaching that point where it is starting to be reasonable to say, okay, now we're going to hit a point where our capacity is used up, and we can implement those charges. So I don't think if I may, I don't think it's about not starting the process. I think it's about the process. Let's get it started tomorrow, but it's about how hard are we going to push it through, and do we just allow the process to take through, and we'll have it ready. And we did look at if we pushed it hard through, what would we gain? We would gain maybe some building permits from August to December, and traditionally those have been a time where we don't get a lot. But I don't think any of us, we want to get this going. We want to get this rolling. But I don't think that's part of the, we don't want to slow it down, put it that way.
Follow up, Councillor Hodgins?
Yeah, we just Quick follow-up. Yeah, just to kind of, for my comments, I don't think we should, I guess, rush the process. Like, I guess we have to do our due diligence. No matter what, we know where it's heading, and that it's going to be, there's going to be a sticker shock to a certain extent. And maybe the number is going to be way higher than we even think it is. And then we have to look like, negotiate or find where we want to land with this anyway. So yeah, I guess we don't rush the process, but certainly want to keep it moving along. So, thanks.
Ron.
And if I may, Madam Mayor, council may wish to reconsider sort of the industrial and the commercial development charges as well. We are in definitely a different position than we were when we started this, maybe not 2 years ago, but certainly 7 years ago. We are in a much different position now. So that's another issue for council, that you have to decide what you want to do and how you want to do that.
Any other discussion? I guess, Deputy Mayor?
I guess, again, I just, part of Ron's report was, deciding or not deciding, and maybe it was just his wording that frustrated me on where council really, whether we can do something or can't do something. And I don't want in February a decision to be made on whether staff should be proceeding or not proceeding with decisions that we won't really know till the summer. And at that moment in time, if staff needs to officially announce that they can't proceed with something, or because it doesn't make sense because it can't be passed with current council, then that's one thing. But to plan on not doing something around whether we're running or not, I really don't want to personally, it bothers me to hear that. So.
Any other discussion points? I guess what I will add, I do have a couple questions. Number one, so we know that we've got to somehow capture the treatment plant project. So Jeff, you brought up an interesting point in that those costs cannot be downloaded, for lack of a better word, to developers until the capacity is reached. So we do have, building that is continuing to go on. And for the sake of discussion, I buy a building permit for my, 20 lots that I have in my subdivision, and I buy it in April. I'm paying the DC now because that's what it is. We go through this process and we find out that the DC charge is going to be, again, for the sake of discussion, $20,000. When I go to buy my permit though, and we pass that, if capacity is still there, what would the charge be being downloaded if the capacity is still at the plant? Is the developer is he paying the lower DC or the higher DC? At what point does that kick in?
Yeah, that was the question we were trying to nail Matt down on, because and really the way he explained it, it's not a black and white number, because we do, as a municipality, as council, you can raise your DCs and you can start charging. If the developer comes forward and says that's unreasonable, he has the right, or they have the right to do that. So you have to be able to defend your DCs. So when you start to get close on your capacity, that's when the municipality does have the more of the power to say, you know what, we've approached capacity. We're not going to go to 100. We never want to operate the plant at 100. So prior to that, we're going to start expansion. So it's more of a gray area that you have to defend is how Matt explained it to us. So
no, I get that. I mean, I think as I've been, lucky to go through the briefing process, I understand where he's coming from, but I guess just wanted to clear up at what point does that kick in when when you are tying that to capacity. So then the other question I have, so taking the treatment plant aside, if we didn't have the treatment plant project in front of us, we would just be going through the normal process, and we would likely revisit the charges in 5 years. I'm just looking kind of for a nod of a head, because there really isn't anything besides the treatment plant that we've missed out on, is there?
Well,
And I guess so then that's my follow-up is I want to make sure when we go through this that we are capturing everything that we can.
Madam Mayor, that's a good question. No, and I would actually, I don't want to say I disagree with that statement.
You can.
But we've always known the expansion's been coming. So we've known the DCs are going to be opened up.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just a matter of when to trigger that opening up. Now, however, over the last little while, it has become quite apparent that there's more pressure to open it up sooner than later. With the increase in construction costs, we've realized that the DCs that we are collecting, say on Saintsbury, are not covering the current costs. Doesn't mean that growth isn't going to pay for it. It just means that we need to be bumping those figures up now. We've seen some changes in some new projects coming in, such as Main Street. That may be an interest to council to say, you know what, let's look at upgrading Main Street to our commercial development that's going in. We don't have that currently in the development charges. There's other projects that are in there, such as extending sidewalks. All those seem to be underfunded. As well as there's now starting to come to light as we expand some of these other things, we are starting to look at maybe we do need another sidewalk machine, and I'm not even touching on fire and that sort of thing. I'm just dealing with public works. So there is a lot of other things that have come to light in the last little while to realize that if we don't start collecting now and we wait, we're missing out. So I think we all agree that we need to open this up, and we need to open it up sooner than later. And rather than waiting 6 months for the expansion, that's why we wanted to have a meeting with BM Ross and say, look, we'd rather open it up now and start putting all these projects and start pulling all this together and have the proper process. So it's not just expansion driven, the plant expansion. There's other stuff that we're looking at.
Okay, I appreciate that clarification. So, and then just to clarify, or I guess just to emphasize, in the BM Ross report, and having gone through this, so you've got 5 years, but you do have a window of a year, and Councillor Hodgins mentioned this, but I want to make it clear, you have a year to be able to open it back up and put something else in once those numbers. So if we come to the end of this process and we don't have hard numbers, we still have a year within adopting it to revisit it without having to go through the whole process again, correct?
Correct. The
Okay.
background study has an expiry date of 12 months. Yes.
Okay, perfect. So, I mean, my feeling on it is, and I think my colleagues are the same way, in that we do need to move on this. But to the Deputy Mayor's point, I don't think we need to have this date in the back of our head as to when it's going to be passed. I think we do it. You do it as correctly and as precisely as you can with the information in front of us, and it gets presented and passed at council when it gets presented and passed at council. That's my thought. Any other discussion on that? So there is a motion in front of us, and I don't know.
Mayor, sorry.
Oh, sorry. What's that? Okay, sorry, Councillor Hodgins.
Yeah,
Okay.
just sorry.
Yeah.
I just had one more question.
Yeah.
Maybe to Jeff or to Ron. I'm just wondering how how does the DC background study, how does that tie in with our asset management plan? Like, are those two things sort of, they work together?
Through you, Madam Mayor, they're definitely interconnected. I think a lot of the figures in the DC calculations come from the asset management plan. So those are sort of the starting numbers, but there may be things that aren't currently in the asset management plan that need to be part of the development charge background study. Okay, so I think one feeds the other. Most of the information comes from the asset management plan, but like I said, when there's things like upgrades, for example, to say Main Street North out to the commercial area. That's not really in the asset management plan because the asset management plan just has what's there currently. It doesn't have the upgrade infrastructure there, right? So I'm not sure, is that kind of what you're?
Yeah, sorry, it was a really vague question. I guess I'm wondering, because I think I've heard in other meetings, like there is an asset management plan update maybe forthcoming in the near future. And I'm just wondering if we're, moving this thing along for the DCs, do we have to then keep our asset management plan update going, like just because the two are like very similar things that kind of tie in to each other?
Yeah, and through the mayor, our asset management update, we have to have it finished by June. I believe it's the end of June. Catherine and I've been following those guidelines from the province. So we will have that. We will have the asset management update coming through, as well as, and I don't mean to steal any of my thunder from later on, but the flow monitoring that is completed now is going to bring a couple of projects out that has to be put into the DCs as well. So I think when we can start this and we can get the projects listed, it's going to be a little bit more of a, and I don't want to say eye opener, but we want to make sure we catch everything. And it's going to be a big change. There's going to be a big change coming. We've had a lot of growth over the last little while and we've got to catch up. So.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comment, discussion? So we do have a recommended motion in front of us from staff, and I guess I would look to Ron to maybe perhaps rewording it a bit in that we just take out the date part of it. So it could read that the council receives report number CAO-03-2022 and authorizes staff to start the background study required for a new development charges bylaw. Period.
Correct. Yeah.
Without the dates.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I would look to council for a mover and a seconder, and I can read that again if need be. Councillor Regan and Deputy Mayor Manders. Was there any further discussion or clarification needed on that? Okay, all opposed? And that's carried. Okay, your next report, Ron.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The next report, and this is probably more Jeff than myself when it comes to technical side of it. So this one is in regards to the potential sale of the township property on I guess it's the south side of Nick Line between Elm Street and Saintsbury Line. So council did have a letter from Theo Van Rostel expressing interest in purchasing that piece of property. So staff council at the last meeting asked staff to look into it. We've looked into it. We're not at the end of the investigation period, but I did want to give a bit of an update because at this point, it's not maybe as clear as it once was. We originally thought it was just the sanitary sewer line that traverses this lot from north to south in the middle of the lot. So it would have to be relocated in order for that lot to be used as a residential building lot. There's also the point that this is a 66-foot wide lot. The lots to the east and to the west of them are both 109 feet. So there's a question of compatibility. What does that mean? What will the neighbors, are they going to object? Are they going to vehemently object to this? And then not the least of which is there's a private, and this is maybe where I can get Jeff to speak to this one, is there's a private drain. It's not technically a storm sewer. It's not part of our infrastructure that we're responsible for. But Jeff, did you want to sort of outline what that is and where it is?
Yeah, so on this piece of property, there is a catch basin and a drain at the back. Due to the winter conditions, haven't put a camera down it yet to see where it goes. But when I looked at the Radcliffe subdivision to the south, it doesn't show an outlet that way. So I'm assuming it goes to Nicoline. It is private, meaning that the township owns it right now because it's on our property. But it's really ownership of the lot, because the lot has a low point in the back portion where the neighboring lots drain into it. This catch basin then takes the water and disposes of it. So what it comes down to is if we do sell this lot, there will have to be a drainage plan put in place for this property, and the owner of the lot will have to maintain that drainage. It's something that I said to Ron, I said, I don't, support the township getting involved in setting this up, because, whoever develops the lot, or if it's developed, can adjust the engineering of that drain as long as the drainage works, and it's approved by the township. They may set up whatever type of drainage they desire on the lot around the property. So it's an item to keep an eye on, but it's certainly manageable on the lot. So
Madam Mayor, to continue, it's a big lot. It's quite deep. It's 66 feet wide. There's not many lots like this around, and I think that's what generated the interest from Mr. Van Rostel. And like I said at the last meeting, I have had 2 more inquiries about that lot, roughly within the same 2-week time span. So there is interest there. The cost of relocating that sanitary sewer, it's not inconsequential. I've heard, and again, I don't know the exact number, but it could be $100,000. So what is, I guess council has to ask themselves, what is the value of that lot? The net value? How is it going to look? Is it from a planning perspective? Is that acceptable? Is that going to be acceptable to the neighbors? Does that matter? I mean, there's lots of questions that I think need to be discussed, I guess, amongst the members of council. And there's an easement that has to be made. Obviously, that sanitary sewer has to lie within an easement. Jeff, is it a 4 meter or 5 meter wide easement? Have you decided that yet, or?
No, I mean, generally we keep it fairly wide for maintenance on it. So, Ron, I would suggest it would be, I prefer 4 to 5 meter, but I mean, we have had it as much as down to 3. So.
Okay. So I guess with all those questions, we did include the land sale policy for council. That was changed back in 2017. It is fairly straightforward. It's not as prescriptive as it once was. There are steps that have to go through. Number one, council has to decide to dispose of the land if they want to dispose of the land. But then the next step is council has to determine whether it wants to offer those to the other agencies, and those agencies are listed under section 3 in the bylaw. And and I would suggest that this 66 feet is not would not be appropriate to offer to agencies such as the conservation authorities or the school board or anything like that. So under section 5 of the bylaw, it says council may dispense with any of the requirements in section 3 and 4 by resolution. So if you're not going to offer it to the list of agencies, council can dispense with that requirement by a simple passing of a motion. So I think at this point, I throw it open to members of council for that discussion as to whether you want staff to continue to pursue this, or do we just stop here?
Thank you for that. Deputy Mayor Manders.
Yeah, it was an interesting inquiry, obviously. you know, we have someone that's made us aware of land that we're not using that is of value. And I always look at this, any of these discussions, you know, at the end of the day, the ratepayers of Lucan Biddulph own this. So that's who owns it. Every ratepayer in Lucan Biddulph owns this. So right now, our ratepayers own a piece of land that's valuable that we're not using for the community. And it's just become really brought to our attention. So what are, you know, I look at this as, you know, Ron used a round number, I'll use a round number. The lot's probably worth over 200,000. If I had to guess, in today's environment, it costs $100,000 to change the services. Round numbers, that, you know, that asset that's not being used is maybe worth $100,000 to us, to the ratepayers. My big thing right now is green space land. And as we do our, you know, 3 or 4 story apartment buildings, you know, anyone that read, you know, anything that went on with COVID over the last couple of years was, again, the high density intensification, as people are wanting places to go read, to sit, and just be away from their setting. So I don't, you know, I'm not looking at, you know, I certainly wouldn't make a recommendation or think that it should be a busy, loud park, but, you know, can it be an area with just some benches and trees? The flip side of all this, what I'm saying is, you create a bit of a park area there. That's an expense every year that we're also, our ratepayers that own that are not paying anything to maintain. We all of a sudden have grass there and we have to cut it and maintain it and have some landscaping. That's an expense that we're creating also. So probably haven't really answered the question, but it's an interesting, you know, first and foremost, if staff felt that we could put that land to use for our ratepayers that own it, that would be my first, that is what I would like to see done. If we think that that land can be put to use for our ratepayers in any way. If it can't be, I think it's too valuable to have unused land that they own. So that's my comments.
Thank you. Other comments or discussion? Councillor Regan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I could concur with my friend, the Deputy Mayor. I would like to see if there's a way we could figure out how we could use this for ratepayers. I think about, you know, they're not making any more land. And I think about areas like this that are in communities that, and again, our community is getting bigger, and it just, and again, it doesn't have to be a, you know, a loud park. And I always said, I thought when I first saw it, I'll be very honest with you, when I first saw it, I thought, well, you know, reading park, something, just a quiet space. And I think that's something that we have to think about, you know, making those decisions today that are going to affect people 15 years from now is what I think is important. So I do concur with the Deputy Mayor, but I'm just wondering if there's a way that staff can take a look to see how we could utilize that for the benefit of ratepayers. And I just, you know, I understand that it's, you know, again, it's an asset that we have. I didn't know we owned that. I thought it was shared among the residents that live there. I had no idea, but I was actually quite happy when I heard that. But I mean, I think that's something that we could perhaps, if we could, ask staff to maybe see how we can use that to benefit our residents now and 15 years from now. Thank you.
Further discussion. Councillor Hodgins.
Thank you. Yeah, my thoughts on this, or my comments, I wouldn't want the township to sell it. I think we should hold on to it. I like the idea of looking into potential use of that if it's just not being used. I think it is being used to a certain extent. If it is, you know, there's a sewer under there that's in service, then that is sort of the use of the land. I think if we do go look at disposing of this, like there's going to be a lot of challenges, and you know, what's going to be proposed there, how's it going to fit in with the existing neighborhood, that might cause some issues. Like if the land was sold, I think it should be sold probably, it would have to be just a very like open and transparent process. I'd rather see that than sort of direct negotiations. That was one of the options in the policy. But then, you know, that would open it up to, so what if, you know, a big developer comes in and wants to put something really big there the neighborhood doesn't like? And I just think, you know, this could go sideways in a lot of different ways potentially. So my comments or my thought, I wouldn't be supportive of disposing of the land, I think we hold on to it. And even if we can't find an immediate use for that property, there could always be something in the future, something that could come up that it could be used for. As the town continues to grow and intensify, the land just becomes that much more valuable to the township as well. And some sort of park with some sort of feature for the residents would be great. So those are my comments. And then just about Jeff's comments at the start about the catch basin on the lot that we don't seem to have any records for and where it drains. Just wondering if it's possible to, I guess, determine where that's going, because, just, I guess, make sure it's not connected into the sanitary line, because, that's rainwater that's inflowing into the system, and we all know about that with our wastewater treatment plant and capacity issues. So if we could just determine that, that would be great. Those are my comments. So thanks.
Thank you. Any other discussion? So I guess maybe I'm looking to Ron a little bit. I do think that there's more questions on the property than we have answers for. And I do think Councillor Hodgins brings up a point at we should get a handle on what's happening with that drain, and get a sense of or the catch basin, what it's doing. But I guess look back to staff to say, is there you're getting a sense, I think, from what my colleagues are saying, is that they're looking for more information as to, not necessarily being interested at this stage to get rid of it, but what else could be done to the benefit of our residents. I think the deputy mayor makes a good point in that it is a piece of land that is valuable. Somebody has, or a number of people have highlighted that and said that they think that it is of value to them. And if we're not going to make use of it, then, is there a way that at least our ratepayers can benefit from the sale of it? But I think it needs to go back to staff for some more information. Yeah, understood. Okay. So at this point, I would just ask for a mover and a seconder to receive that report for information. Councillor Regan and Councillor Hodgins, all opposed, and that's carried. Great. Did you have any verbals?
Not at this time, no, I don't.
Okay. All right, Lisa.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I presented a quick little report on the upcoming 2022 municipal election and just some key dates to be aware of if people are interested. All these things are posted on the website as well. And then information on encouraging people to check to see if they're on voter lookup and how to do that. And again, that stuff was included in, it was included in the community guide, and it's also on our website. So like I said, just a quick little report on upcoming key dates for the election. I should note that sorry, it wasn't in the report, but the actual time frame for the election, because with internet voting, you have an advanced voting period, which usually leads right up into the election. So that will start, October 17th until voting evening at 8 p.m. So it's a good chunk of time where people can actually get online or call in to vote. That's everything. Thank you.
Is there any discussion or points of clarification from council on any of that? Councillor Regan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Lisa, I was just wondering, so during the time that, just to refresh my memory, during the time that they can start voting online and the 8 o'clock on the 24th, can you still campaign?
Mm-hmm.
just a campaigning, so it doesn't just, okay, okay.
No, of course, people can campaign right up until, I mean,
Right up
there's
to
not,
no, I
there's-
couldn't remember if you had to stop
Yeah.
when it stopped.
there's
Okay.
obviously restrictions on where you can campaign, not the
Oh, well,
voting
yeah,
center. And
yes, I remember being told. Thank you. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Okay.
And as a lower tier in Middlesex County, we will be looking at arranging a training session for people who want to be candidates and council members in the future.
On that note, the Women's Caucus of Middlesex County is hosting an election school on March 26th, and it's open to everyone. So there'll be further details coming about that. So there'll be lots of opportunity to learn how to be a candidate and what it means to be a councillor. Any further discussion? Then I would ask for, maybe just one question, Lisa. So it is internet voting, so there won't be a polling station, but are we going to, in the past, we have had iPads available for those that don't have technology to come to either to the township office. And I know that you've made arrangements with a number of our seniors to go out and visit them, but I guess, will you be working with the library, or will there be iPads set up at the township office for voting?
Yep. We will have a voting help center at the township office. There'll be extended hours during this time as well, and a Saturday option as well, so people can come and vote at the office. The library is also, I think they're more informed about how to do it, not so much a voting center, but we always do advertise that there's free computers there that people could use if they don't. And I do go out, like I said, to the retirement homes, the apartment buildings, it's a retirement home. So yes, the apartment buildings and retirement home to help those out.
So if there's no further discussion on that, then I would ask for a mover and a seconder to receive Lisa's report for information, please. Councillor Westman and Councillor Hodgins. All opposed? That's carried. Okay, building and bylaw. Welcome, Arnie. You've been sitting there quietly for quite some time, and it's great to see you, and I will hand it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening, Council. I'm happy to have sat and listened because that's some great conversation. So first, I ask if you have any problems hearing me, just to let me know in case my internet connection is not great. But I am here tonight to present our year-end report and fourth quarter in the same summary. And I guess a lot has changed in a course of 1 year. At the end of 2020, we were a department of 3, maintaining Middlesex Center and Lucan Biddulph. And at the end of 2021, we're a department of 6 in building division, servicing 5 municipalities. So there's been some significant change in building division, and I'm really pleased to say that we've done well. Responding to inquiries, building permit applications, and getting our inspections done, all in the right time frames, especially during a significant building boom that we're experiencing still. So I'll slowly take council through my staff report, and the first table really is intended to show council the activity that building division has been involved in. It's a bit of a comparator or summary for the 5 municipalities that we service: Middlesex Center, Lucan Biddulph, Adelaide, Metcalfe, North Middlesex, and Southwest Middlesex. I guess I'm going to scroll into table 2. Really is kind of the meat of what we've seen in Lucan Biddulph this year. And a couple things I think that are really significant is of the new housing starts we had this year, which are approximately, say, 75. We'll see that in the follow-up table. We've had 28 new townhouse units. So 28 new townhouse units as compared to 48 dwellings. About a third of our new dwellings in Lucan Biddulph are medium density. And I think that's something that, just as I was listening to council, I looked at Middlesex Center, and it's about 1/6 of new dwellings in Middlesex Center are medium density. And so Lucan, I think, should be really proud of 1/3 of their developments being medium density. That shows a lot on the different layers of the people involved. Well, it's council policies, planning and administration, as well as the developers knowing the type of market that Lucan will accept, and it's been a really beneficial, I think, for everybody. And like it was stated earlier, with the apartment buildings potentially coming into the village, as well as continuing with townhouse units, I think we have a really good variety of housing in Lucan Biddulph that we should really be proud of. So into the third table is generally sort of a financial summary. And there's one small correction here that I will provide to Tina following this meeting. The fees generated, for 2021, the fees generated, the fourth column over, should be corrected to 186,000 from 212. And development charges are 505,000 instead of 595. We included the new apartment building, the second apartment building behind, or sorry, the third that's about to start, I should say. The third apartment building behind the municipal office in last year's numbers, but technically that permit was issued in January. So I'll provide a correction to Tina that will show the fees generated, not including that apartment building. That'll be in next year's year-end report. But yeah, essentially we see 79 new dwellings in Lucan Biddulph, 161 permits, very consistent with previous years. And you can also see the previous years. We have the apartment buildings in 2020 and 2017. And unfortunately, I don't have at my fingertips what we saw for townhouse units previous years, but it still continuously shows that we're looking at maybe a third to a quarter of our new dwellings are medium to high density. So I think, again, that's something that we should be really proud of. The fourth table in the report is generally a breakdown of where we're seeing new permits. A couple of new houses in Granton this year. Granton's been quiet for the past few years, so it's nice to have a new redevelopment there of some infill lots in Granton. But by and large, the demand is in Lucan, and the demand continues to be in Lucan. If you have a property in Lucan Biddulph that's zoned residential, you can sell it tomorrow and build on it without a problem. The demand is high in the county. So that's generally the summary of my report. If there's any questions, I'm happy to speak to council.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Arnie. I would look to council for any questions on the report that's in front of us. Deputy Mayor Manders.
Sorry, Arnie, it's maybe not a question for you, but it just reminded me of something I've been wanting to ask someone from staff. Maybe, I don't think you'll know this answer, but is there you're intriguing there with the Granton development? I'm just curious of Mike Fletcher's property. Does anybody know? I've been asked, does anyone know when the next steps on that are going to be? And I realize this maybe isn't the moment, but when I already talked with the two builds in Granton, it reminded me of that. So does anyone know where that sits or has it just been a standstill?
Madam Mayor, if I can, Dan Fitzgerald is still with us. He's probably the best one to answer that question.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Good thing I stick around at these times, right? Yeah, no, in that particular instance, so the developer in that case is working through the draft plan approved conditions at this point in time. So we have done a initial review of the detailed engineering design, and comments have gone back to the applicant. So we're just waiting now for a second submission.
Oh, no, very good. No, thanks. Sorry about that.
Okay. Back to my original question. Any discussion on Arnie's report?
That's okay.
You mentioned, Arnie, at the beginning of your report that your department, has grown, which is great, and that you're now responsible for the services in our neighboring communities, Adelaide, Metcalfe, North, Middlesex, and Southwest, I believe, the three of them. And I guess I would just ask, obviously you've grown your staff to manage it, but how is it managing a department now this size and then having to address all the concerns and everything that's happening, not only in our community in Middlesex Center, but now our neighbors as well?
Yeah, sure. That's a great question. Through you, the Mayor. we try to appoint staff to each individual municipalities. So Lucan Biddulph, generally we have Ben Hartman as primary inspector. Ben will sit in on planning meetings. I will also sit in on meetings when I can. And we have the same with the other member municipalities, that we try to have one of our inspectors sort of as a specialist to that municipality. So we can sort of delegate a lot of different responsibilities to staff. It keeps them up to date with what's going on at the planning stages. Also gives good experience of those communications outside of just doing building plans review and building inspection. For myself, I report to the 5 councils, so it is a bit busier for me for sure. But we've done really well, and we cover for each other if there's vacations or whatnot. But it seems to be going well.
Just know that some of our neighboring communities have, some potential growth on their hands. So your department, I think, will be quite busy in the months and years to come for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And we are monitoring that as well for demand of our inspectors and how to respond to it.
I'm sure. Okay, if there's Tina.
I'll maybe at this time just mention that there is a staff appointment bylaw included at the end tonight that is to amend to add some of Arnie's staff members. I don't know, Arnie, if you want to mention those names.
Sure. Thank you, Tina. We have a new bylaw enforcement officer. Dan Allery started with us just a couple weeks back. So I'll definitely bring him in to at least introduce to administration, and maybe at a council meeting we can introduce Dan. And Corey, I apologize. I forget his last name. Corey started with us as well about a month ago, and he's done really well. Corey was a co-op student with us 2 years ago from Fanshawe College, and we were super impressed with Corey. So we brought him on as well as to bring him into the career of building inspection.
That's great. I think does Tina have Corey's last name?
I believe it was Bowerman.
Bowerman, yes, yeah, sorry.
Well, that's great. We certainly look forward to meeting them at some point. And, I think that's a great story for Corey, that he was a co-op student and now you've been able to bring him on full time. That certainly is a really good news story. Glad to be part of it. So if there's not any more discussion on that, I would ask for a mover and a seconder to receive report BD-01-2022 for information. Deputy Mayor Manders and Councillor Reagan. All opposed? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Great to see you, Arnie. Take care.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Although you're welcome to stay.
I'll check the agenda.
Okay. And now we'll move on to finance with Catherine.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just one quick report tonight, and that's just for your information only. It's a report that I have to bring to council every year before March 31st as per legislation. It's just a summary of the salary and expenses that council had in 2021.
Thank you for that, Catherine. Any discussion? Then I would ask for a mover and a seconder to receive that report for information, please. Deputy Mayor Manders and Councillor Hodgins. All opposed? And that's carried. I think that's it, right, Catherine?
Yes, thanks.
Okay, on back to planning, Dan.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to members of council. So on council's agenda tonight is a brief planning report, and as well as an attached bylaw. It's bylaw 200-2022. And the purpose of that is basically an implementing zoning bylaw, which was previously approved in principle on March 16th, 2021. And that's in relation to the Asable Fields subdivision. So that's county file number 39T-LB 2001. So just for clarification, that is for Asable Fields. And so everyone's aware, that proposal does include 12 building lots that are intended for single detached dwellings, and one reserve block, which is intended for 76, or conceptually designed for 76 townhouse dwelling units. So just because we're on, the topic of discussion tonight in terms of intensification and what that looks like. So this particular subdivision, I ran the quick numbers here. In terms of intensification, includes 73.5% of the land would be classified as intensification. So that's pretty aggressive in terms of the township. So as I noted, the original proposal was brought forth on March 16th, 2021. And the draft plan was approved at that time, and zoning was approved in principle. Subsequent to that, the County of Middlesex did approve the draft plan approval for the subdivision on May 31st, 2021. However, I would note that while the original council recommendation was to bring back the proposal once the county had approved the draft plan for the zoning bylaw, we were waiting to figure out what was going to happen with respect to the noise considerations and clauses that were required for this particular development. If you will recall, it is located abutting existing industrial uses to the south. So we were just kind of waiting for clarification from their noise consultant engineer that the provisions that were included in the bylaw were sufficient. So upon further investigation by their noise consultant, it was indicated that they would require additional measures in terms of zoning to limit potential development on the single family lots. So if we will recall, there was a R2-3 zone, which was previously included in the recommendation and only applied to one of the lots. And effectively that limited the height of any potential development to 1 story. And that basically that requirement was based on noise mitigation to ensure that both the exterior and interior of the units would meet the MPC 300 guidelines for noise reduction on the lands. However, upon further discussion with their noise consultant, as well as their proposed noise mitigation solution, which is in this case a noise wall, a 3-meter tall noise wall abutting the property, which is unit 11 on their draft plan. It was found, and there also was some noise mitigation considerations for existing equipment on the lands immediately south of this particular lot, which is the Scott fertilizer mixing plant that's located on those lands. Upon further discussion with their engineer, it was found that there was a concern about potential mitigating that noise on the adjacent property, and rather than dealing with the source of noise at the point, they decided that it would be a better solution to limit height on the resulting subdivision, which is now effectively resulting in an additional 5 lots being rezoned to the R2-3H zone, which again, just effectively still allows for the single detached dwelling, still all the same provisions. The only thing that changes in this particular instance is that those 6 lots in the draft plan are limited to 1 story in height, whereas the remainder of the subdivision will be subject to or permitted to extend to 2 stories in height. So with that said, we have included the bylaw on the agenda for council consideration, and we are recommending that council approve the bylaw with the holding provisions that are also included in the attachment. So thank you, and I'm certainly available for any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you for that, Dan. I know that this has been a long time in coming and that there's been a lot of work done on it, so I appreciate all your involvement in it. Questions, discussion on this report? Councillor Regan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just forgive me, Dan, when I was reading through the report, there was one section, they were talking about the access road for emergency vehicles. Is that, and I'm trying to bring it up here and it keeps crashing on me, so I can't actually just tell you exactly what section it was. But do you recall that part of the conditions that there had to be some inspection on an access road that had to be, I think we involved the chief as well to take a look?
Through the mayor, I'm not exactly following maybe, so what I would say is we are working through the detailed design, the engineering design with respect to the draft plan conditions. And you are correct that there are limitations and requirements for fire access to this particular property, as well as construction access points. So as part of the draft plan conditions and overall approval of this particular portion of the subdivision, the intent would be to limit access to this particular portion of lands through Queen Street or the Queen Street extension that is required through the subdivision development. And the purpose of that is basically to keep traffic and construction traffic, mud, debris, dust out of the existing subdivision that's on Elizabeth.
Right. Okay. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Madam Mayor. We're good.
Okay. Any other discussion points on this report? Councillor Hodgins.
Thank you. Within the noise impact assessment report, there are some warning clauses that that it says should be included in agreements registered on title. So is that addressed through like the planning process? Like, does that get worked in somewhere, or how do we ensure that captured?
Yeah, so through the chair to Councillor Hodgins, that's actually a great question. So with respect to the noise mitigation clauses in the noise impact study provided by Dylan, there is basically requirements for what they call warning clauses. So and those warning clauses are standard in class 4 designated areas for noise mitigation. So in this particular instance, those clauses actually get incorporated into the draft plan conditions, which they have been, and then included in the subdivision agreement, which will be a specific clause actually in the subdivision agreement that addresses those specific warning clauses. As it's been set up to date, they would be required to be included on the title of the properties through a restrictive covenant, which basically requires that any owner, purchaser, or renter of the lands be notified of what those noise mitigation standards are and the potential impacts of them. And so generally, those limitations would require air conditioning units in most units, and then there will be additional building code standards that would apply to certain material types or densities on building envelopes that would basically mitigate any potential noise within the interior of a unit during sensitive time periods.
Okay, thank you. And then I guess what's the status of this development? This is the zoning bylaw amendment, but where does the overall, I guess, development stand?
Through the chair to Councillor Hodgins. So in this particular development has draft plan approval right now, and the zoning bylaw would be the subject of the council consideration this evening. In terms of the overall process where the subdivision is at, so we've done our detailed review of the engineering design, and it has been approved by. They do have, I think, an approved ECA through the ministry, or it's very close at this point in time. So we're effectively just working through the subdivision agreement, specifically at this point, once the zoning's in place, and that will come back to council. I would actually think relatively soon, as long as we can get through that rather quickly. And once we get that in place, then we'll be looking for final approval from the county. It could be relatively short order moving forward here.
Thanks, Dan.
Any further discussion? We just have a question, and this might not be the place to ask it, but I will ask it anyways. Just on the extension of Community Drive, because when we had the public meeting on this, there was discussion about extending Community Drive and bringing it around. And I know that we haven't approved anything, but maybe it comes into the site plan and everything. But I think the point had been made, and I think at the time council agreed with the point that had been made, that leave the option open in the event that we want to extend it one day. And I guess, is that possible? Has that been done, or is that another step in the future?
And if I may, Madam Mayor, yes. So in the engineering that we're reviewing, there will be, there will be the access to Community Drive as designed, that it can continue on. So it will stop at this development. They'll be responsible for their portion of it. But the design of the road itself would allow us to continue on through if that was the direction from council.
And then I guess the other question is, do improvements have to be made to Queen Street as well because of this development, or is the only access into this development, once it is developed, going to be Elizabeth Street?
So, Madam Mayor, the plan would be to allow this development to do its building and its build out, and then the municipality would take a step back and look at their section of Queen Street, which is existing. And it does support truck traffic now. It is an industrial road. We have the water tower and the buses there. So once that's complete, then we'll come back and decide how we want to address that section of Queen Street, and what we'll do with it, to be honest. So that hasn't been planned yet.
Yeah, and through you, Mayor, just to provide a little additional comment on that from what Jeff left on, the zoning that's recommended for the medium density lot, being the R3-11-H3 holding, does also require for number one, site plan approval, and then number two, as a condition of the draft plan approval, requires a traffic engineering study from the developer to look at that section of road specific to William Street and the intersection there. So that particular traffic impact study, as required by the county engineer, may indicate potential improvements to that intersection, and then subsequently back into Queen Street to the new portion of Queen Street.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. One last call out for discussion or questions. Okay, so we do have a motion in front of us that council receives report number PL-03-2022 and accepts the planner's recommendation. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Regan and Deputy Mayor Manders. All opposed. And that's carried. Okay, thank you very much, Dan. On to Public Works. And you're welcome to stay too, but I know it's been a long night already. So on to Public Works, Jeff.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. I have two reports tonight. The first one will be the maintenance gravel tender results came back in. This tender is for maintenance gravel, which we do annually. We do one half the municipality every other year. So we did submit it. We got 4 bids back. Blaine Trucking, which is a local contractor, did supply us with a low bid. He came back in at $13.30 a ton supplied and put on the road. That is up 20% over last year. However, we do know that gravel prices are under pressure, and that there has been pressures rising, and we have built into our budget. We knew prices had gone up. So when we came back with this contract, we were under budget. We were planning on $14 a ton. So that was an interesting, we feel that we did okay there. So my recommendation is that we do go with low tender and we go with the Blaine Trucking bid.
Okay. Questions on this report and tender results? Okay, can I get a mover and a seconder for the motion in front of us? Councillor Westman and Councillor Hodgins. All opposed? and that's carried.
Okay, the second one is, goes in hand with the gravel maintenance tender, which is the dust control for loose top. Again, it gets issued every year. We put dust control on all gravel roads, a little more on the fresh gravel or the maintenance gravel that we put down just to set it. So again, we got 4 bids back. We have Denmark Brines was low bid. They have been our supplier the last number of years. So we are comfortable with Denmark. The price this year is up about 20%. Was not built into the budget a 20% increase, just because previous years this budget has not gone up considerably. There hasn't been a pressure to move this product upwards. So I was a little bit, I don't want to call shocked, but because we are over budget on this. However, I'd like to point out that it is a line item in the loose top budget, just as gravel maintenance of the tender. But prior, we're going to be under budget on that line item. And I'm confident that the overall budget for loose top will still be on track. And that by the time everything plays out, we'll still be comfortably within budget. One other item with the dust control, and one of the things we bid on a product, and we only use about 90% of the tender if it's a wet or if it's a normal year. We always carry about 10% in case it's a dry year, so that we run out of dust control, say in August or September, and we have to add a little bit. So the hope would be that if we have a normal year, we can save a bit of money there too, like we did last year. We were under budget last year just because it was a normal year. We didn't have to do reapplications in the fall. So anyways, my recommendation is that we take low tender, and that is Denmark Brines.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for that, Jeff. Comments, discussion on this tender result? And I guess the thought would be with both of them that, the costs are, going to go up, and they probably aren't going to come down after this. So just to be prepared for that in the years to come. With that, if there's no discussion, then I would ask for a mover and a seconder for the motion in front of us. Councillor Hodgins and Councillor Regan. All opposed? And that's carried. Did you have any verbal updates?
Yes, Madam Mayor. I have 2 topics. The first one I touched on. The flow monitoring is complete. I have been in touch with Andrew at BM Ross. He is finishing up the charts, and he should have the information to me either late this week or early next week, which then we can process and we can evaluate and hopefully get that information out to the proper people. So that's good news. So the other topic I have, and this is open for discussion for council, I wanted to bring to council. It's not a large budget item, but it's a one-off, and I open it up to council. So in the county of Middlesex, there's a number of municipalities that spray for weeds along roadsides. Middlesex Center, the county, Strathroy, Caradoc, Adelaide, Metcalfe. We have had a couple of inquiries from farmers in the country about weed control along our road allowance. And in discussions with the road supervisor, we did talk about that it might be a good idea to try this. We propose to do a very small section, and we can obviously notify landowners, because there are some landowners that don't want weed spraying done. Organic farmers come to mind. They don't want anything near their properties, as well as in the past I've come across horses will lean across fences and that sort of thing. So we do have to be careful with it, but there is a way of doing it. The contractor that does it is done through the county on a tender. They will turn off and turn on their sprays simply by seeing a sign on the side of the road. So it's not something that is just wide open and sprayed everywhere. So it very is controlled these days. I'm looking at about 25 kilometers. We would be looking at, the supervisor has outlined a couple of test roads, and it would amount to about $2,500 in cost. So it's not so much a cost that I'm concerned about. I just wanted to make sure what council's thoughts were on trying this. It's one of those things you can see on both sides. We do get calls from farmers who do spray for weeds, and yet in our ditches, our weeds are growing right there. So I maybe kind of open up if there's a discussion or any questions about this topic.
Thanks, Jeff. So discussion, Councillor Regan.
Yes, I just wanted to ask Jeff, what are the benefits of doing this? Or are they? Sorry, go ahead.
So yeah, so through the mayor. So the idea is that there is a number of weeds, we spray for that, and we keep them down just as like a farmer or an agricultural plot does not want the weeds and the seed pods blowing into their fields. So we promote grasses along the ditch lines. And but that's basically the reasons why you would go ahead and spray, is more for the agricultural benefits to the local farmers.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thanks, Jeff.
Deputy Mayor Manders.
Is this something, Jeff, you'd consider look for input and not bring up, just be a part of a budgetary item and continue to expand or do more, or what's the step two?
Yeah, so and again through the mayor, you put it basically on a maintenance program, and you don't do it every year. It's something very similar to the maintenance. You may only spray a certain area once every 3 years. And you may not eliminate every weed in your road allowance, but at least you keep control of them. I'm staying away from the Phragmite situation out there because that's slightly different. That's a different attack that we're going to have to do on some of our roads. But this is more of the general spraying just to keep the weeds down. So.
I know, you're not, I got to assume that you hope that we're in favor of that, the expense of doing it, or that makes sense to me. So anyways, not sure what you're looking for, but no, it sounds good.
Other comments or discussion points? Councillor Hodgins.
Thanks. I guess, so we're looking at 25 kilometers as like a test section or a place to do it first, and just wondering if then we do it somewhere and then other people are going to want it elsewhere, and I guess just like if we're setting the expectation of we're going to do this, and then is everyone going to expect this to be done all the time, and it is going to be a new annual cost, which it sounds like it may be, even though it's kind of more for the benefit of the property owners than the township. I don't think I really have a question in there, but I guess I'm just not sure we want to go and just provide this service. And I guess maybe a question would be like, are there any environmental considerations we have to consider? You mentioned there may be horses or livestock that could potentially be affected, but what about other wildlife, or any would we consult with UTRCA or ABCA on this at all?
Yeah, and through the mayor. So I mean, obviously this is a fully licensed program. It's done under, under supervision. So it's something that is not uncommon, throughout the county that's done. So the contractor being licensed is responsible for not overspraying, for keeping spray away from only on township property. And like I said, we would advertise it. We would have to put it out there and allow the property owners to know what's happening before we do this. And because this is something that Lucan Biddulph hasn't, they did it in the past, but this is something that they got away from. I think that's very important, is that we have to let the property owners know, because again, I think one of the biggest thing is more about the organic farmers, that they contact us and ask us not to have any spray even close to their properties. So again, I think, it's a bit of a hot topic. We don't have to, if this is something that we talked about, and if you want to put it off, I can put it off and bring back more information. It's certainly, it can be two sides of the fence. If you look at it from agricultural purposes, the farmers like it, but environmentalists, some of them don't want to see any sprays whatsoever. So, it's a tough one. I mean, that's why I bring it up, just so I didn't, just so council's aware of something here. And obviously maybe I bring more information back and we delay it this year and we look at a program set up maybe for next year or test years. So.
Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
Maybe just to add, I guess from the perspective of the township as a whole, we don't really seem to have an issue with this. So, kind of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But if this is sort of being driven by the property owners, but it's on our property, if there's any other options as well for some sort of cost sharing, or if it's done at their cost, but we administer it, or there's some split, maybe more investigation into that as well could be considered if it's more property owner driven. But interested in hearing what others think.
Any other discussion? I like the idea, Jeff, of maybe coming back with some more information, and maybe even just a little bit more on the history of why we stopped. And obviously I sit on county council, so I know it's something that the county does. I know that our neighbors do it. I think I would feel more comfortable just with a little bit more information before I said yes. I mean, on the flip side, 25 kilometers, just testing it to see, it's not a huge investment, but to Councillor Hodgins' point, once you start, it will likely only expand from there. So I personally would like to see more information.
Yep, and Madam Mayor, I think that's exactly why I brought it up, and just to open the door to this discussion. So, that sounds good.
Okay, great. Did you have anything else?
Nope, that's it. That's enough.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Jeff. Okay, Parks and Rec, Paul.
Thank you to you, Madam Mayor. This evening, I don't have a report, but I do have some just verbal updates for council. Obviously, the Premier made an announcement the other day that as of the 17th, there's some changes to capacity limits. For us, it's merely that 500 limit now just goes back to the 50%, which is still a lot of people for our facility. So, with construction going on, that shouldn't be a terrible thing. The other update on that is that Tonda's been very anxious to get going, and you may have heard around town, or you may have seen if you've come into the community center, they're starting to prepare themselves to do some work inside the facility. There's going to be some moving around and strategic planning to make it so we're still a functional facility during this time, but they're very anxious to go, and they're very much looking forward to keeping things on time, which is great. I'm very happy with our site super. They seem very, very eager and very easy to work with. And I think it shows how good of a project this is going to be. So I'm very happy with that.
Thank you for that, Paul. Lisa, economic development.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A brief report in front of you tonight regarding some of the upcoming community events that are being planned for Lucan Biddulph this summer, starting with, again, Summerfest, July 23rd, 22. We will have the daytime event at Market Street Park and the surrounding streets will be utilized, and we will be working with the Legion for them to have some sort of, hopefully, a patio and some live music to add to the event during the day. In the evening, again, we'll bring back the concert at the community center at the Ball Diamonds. We're hoping to roll that announcement out for Monday. Just finalizing some details still this week about that. We have some movie nights in the park planned. One will be more of a date night sort of theme, and then the other ones will be family themed. We're hoping to have some grant funding announcement, hopefully, regarding having some what I would call Market on Main. That will be a few Friday nights through the summer and live music and vendors and different things like that to kind of bring some life into the downtown core through the summer. And the other thing is the community improvement plan programs. The grants will be open up at the end of the month for our local businesses to participate in. And that was funded by council of a $25,000 program. And it's first come, first serve grant program.
Is that it? That's it. Okay, questions on that report for Lisa? Councillor Hodgins.
For the community improvement plan that opens up end of this month, just wondering, have we had like some communications go out in the newsletters or social media so people are aware of that, just if it is on a first come first served basis?
Yeah. As soon as I'm going to roll that out, there'll be a newsletter. Obviously, it'll be on social media, on our website. So the applications are now open. I'll get that out just before it opens. So it's all ready now. Just gotta have to get the information out.
Great. Thanks.
Any other discussion? Councillor Regan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Lisa, I was just wondering, I know there was an accessibility audit. Did we have that? Did we have results from that? Just how that worked in with the accessibility program?
Yeah, unfortunately, the one Friday they were coming, there was a bit of a storm, so that got delayed. We have 2 people flying in from Montreal, and then so it got rescheduled to, I believe, March 4th or 1st, one of those days. But it's been rescheduled.
All right. Great. Well, thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Lisa.
Another discussion point? All right, seeing none, can I get a mover and a seconder to receive Lisa's report for information, please? Deputy Mayor Manders and Councillor Hodgins, all opposed? And that's carried. Councillor comments? Councillor Regan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A comment question actually just for Ron, if I may. So I know we received a bit of an update with respect to the 20.9% growth that we had in the community over the last year. I think we ranked rather high in the country, which is wonderful. We're seeing the growth. I guess the question I had came from a resident who didn't want to put their name to it, but I'll put my name to it. And they were asking, with that growth that we've had over the last year, Ron, have we kept up with the providing services at that rate? I think they were referring to things like just everything from cleaning sidewalks to services, staff available to take care of concerns. just everything that goes with sort of that curve of the growth. It's like this, making sure that the services that we have are all going to be in place. That's pretty, it's a huge amount for over a period of a year. And that was just a concern and a question, I guess they had.
Through you, Madam Mayor, good question. I think the best answer I can give you is that, you know, this council and previous councils, as well as staff, have done their best to maintain the existing levels of service, and in some cases enhance service. And I would look to such things as technology. You know, there's new technologies out there that have we've been lucky enough and fortunate enough to take advantage of. Specifically, I'm thinking the building permit, the online building permit application process. That has made us more, I guess, administratively efficient. You know, there's a lot of things in Paul's department, there's a lot of things in Jeff's department that we've been able to take advantage of as they come forward. We also obviously have been doing things like the strategic planning, things like the recreation master plan, the asset management plan. You know, even so far as our official plan update, you know, all those things speak to planning for the future. You know, next year we're looking at the fire services master plan. So I think this council and staff have been very well focused on the future and maintaining what we have and to do it in an economic fashion. So I do feel very comfortable and very, you know, confident that we've done a good job, and I have no reason to think we won't continue to do a good job.
Okay, thank you very much, Ron. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Jeff, did you want to add something?
Yep, as soon as I get off mute there. Just to follow up, Ron, on some of the primary services, we have to meet those services, and we are. We're not focusing on one area or another. We treat everything the same. And for instance, a road has to get plowed. We can't bypass or move that service level lower just because we have growth. We've in fact increased some of our service levels because we are having we can do it on a broader scale. So I think there has been some improvements in the level of service, but at the same time, we're not lowering our level of service on growth. What I would say that we have to look at is the future, what we're doing as we keep growing, and that's where my main concern is. But right now, I'm confident in our servicing everything out there that we're doing. So,
thank you, Jeff. Thank you.
Paul?
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. If I may as well, just on top of what Ron and Jeff have said, we are currently also in the process of implementing several of the things that council's approved to improve our services. So I think that there's going to see a change. You know, we've got our maintenance manager software, we've got our Perfect Mind software. All these things are going to really help our accessibility and the way that we are available and the amount of information we can provide people. And I think it's going to streamline a lot of what we do. So I think, there's this implementation stage that it takes a bit as there's a transition over, but I think when we get there, I really feel the community is going to notice, and I hope they're going to be happy with it.
I might just add, because I was going to bring up the census results in my comments. Just as a reminder, that 21% increase didn't happen over a year. It was over a 4-year period. And, we were able to plan with it. I think you would agree with me in that number was shocking. We all knew it was going to be high. I think we were quite happy in 2016 when we had an 11% increase in our growth. And at that time, we were, leading the county on a per capita basis. And now we find that, we're number 21 in the country. But we've had time to plan. And as I said, we knew it was going to be high, but I don't think we expected it to be 21%. But that being said, that's why we have asset management plans. And that's why we're going through the development charge program or revisit right now. You know, development charges are there so that your service and what you offer your community is appropriate and it grows with that. So I would say to whoever it was that you had your discussion with, that they should feel quite comfortable that we continue to move forward with everything that's happening in the community. Any other councillor comments? Okay, there are no changes to budget. Any notices of motion? Then we will move into our motions, and the first one up is the accounts paid. And the motion in front of us is that the Council of the Township of Lucan Biddulph receive the attached accounts as paid for information as follows. For January 2022, $650,135.83. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Westman and Councillor Hodgins, all opposed? That's carried. Regarding the AMCTO conference, that the Council of the Township of Lucan Biddulph authorize Tina Murner, my battery's running low, but I think I should be okay. Authorize that Tina Murner to attend the AMCTO conference in Niagara Falls on June 12th to 15th, 2022 at a registration cost of $875 plus HST, and that Lisa DeBoer for attend the virtual light AMCTO conference option at a registration cost of $225 plus HST. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Deputy Mayor Manders and Councillor Hodgins, all opposed, and that's carried. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bylaws in front of us. That if no one cares to speak to these bylaws, 09-2022 through 12-2022 inclusive, and bylaw 200-2022 on their first, second, third reading, that they be considered to have been read a first time and passed, read a second time and passed, and read a third time and passed. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Deputy Mayor Manders and Councillor Regan, all opposed, and that's carried. And resolved that the council meeting be adjourned at 8:27 p.m. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Hodgins and Councillor Westman, all opposed, and that's carried. Thank you very much.